Four Mondays, Kunsthalle Münster Podcast. Four Mondays ist der Podcast der Kunsthalle Münster. Zu Gast sind KünstlerInnen, TheoretikerInnen und AutorInnen, die der Kunsthalle auf besondere Weise verbunden sind. Der Podcast gewährt Einblicke in die vielfältigen Arbeitsfelder der Kunst und die Praxis der eingeladenen KünstlerInnen.
Adrian Williams' One Word ist die erste künstlerische Folge unseres Podcasts. 2019 realisierte die amerikanische Künstlerin, die viele Jahre in Frankfurt am Main gelebt und gearbeitet hat, im Fußballstadion des Vereins SC Preußen Münster die Performance The Curve. Für die kurze Dauer des Sonnenuntergangs wurde das Stadion zum Schauplatz einer akustischen Intervention, bei der Licht und Klang in ein Wechselspiel miteinander traten. Für Four Mondays liest Adrian Williams ihren Text One Word, in dem sie der Bedeutung des deutschen Worts Himmels nachgeht. Während der gemeinsamen Arbeit an dem Buch, das ausgehend von ihrer Performance entstand, genauer den Übersetzungen der Texte, jenem Vor und Zurück zwischen Englischem und Deutschem, offenbarte sich das Unvermögen der deutschen Sprache, jenen Unterschied von Heaven und Sky in Worte zu fassen.
One word. Look at the sky. Look at the sky again. Every time we raise our heads, the sky is new. An unrelenting current, energy moving air and water. Light bounced around to feed us. It is boundless. The sky shifts like the river. You never wade in twice. We can give it coordinates. We can design points on an invisible grid. We can use that grid to depict a world we try to master but by no means hold. At night the sky expands and breaks its shell to touch the stars. It seems to have no limits. The word sky somehow holds the potential for what this thing might be. There is no other word for sky in German than Himmel, and in German, Himmel means heaven. I'm stuck in translation's backdraft, stuck in my own understanding of the word, stuck in my desire to make solid what isn't. While translating, I use the word now, in German, Himmel, from the English, sky, and I can't stop thinking about what happens if I have to move it back. Because when I move the word back to English, now the sky can become one of two things. It can be heaven or sky. Because in German, sky and heaven are the same thing. Well, not exactly, they are not the same thing, but they share the same word. A word that, so I've been told, is altered by its context, by what it needs to do. This translation feels impossible. How can you give two completely different things the same word? Of course, in English, we have lots of words that do that. Words that do not set themselves apart by sound, like two and two and two, but then use spelling and context to give them meaning. But this is somehow different. It makes me read meaning into German. It makes me feel differently about how I use the word sky when I know it is moving into this other language. Rain falls from the heavens. Birds migrate through the heavens. A child lets go of a balloon, it ascends and is lost in the heavens. Heaven is the expanse beyond and above everything on earth. Heaven is blue, sometimes overcast and always beyond our control. In German, the sky has no other name. And it feels odd to apply this word to common things like rain and air traffic. When I think of how it sounds in war, as drones drop bombs from the heavens on people unseen, the word hurts. In German, the meanings are bound to the word, no matter how we try not to see it. And though it can be unfortunate, it is in and of itself poetic, romantic, full of religious connotations and various forms of spirit. But no matter how useful or how striking it may be, still I find it hard to use. I want the sky to be non-secular. I feel the urge to pull it apart. I want the words to represent two things, one scientific and one spiritual. I want to guard the facts of light from the romance of religion. I want to liberate the sky from this inherent other meaning. I want the sky to be free, empty, unrelated to ephemeral concepts of life and death, even when at times they might live there. I want the sky to be plain, factual, unbound and empty. I want the word empty so that I can fill it up. When William Carlos Williams wrote Spring and All, he had some thoughts on this. He said, "So long as the sky is recognized as an association, is recognized in its function of accessory to vague words, whose meaning it is impossible to rediscover, its value can be nothing but mathematical, certain limits of gravity and density of air. The farmer and the fisherman who read their own lives there have a practical corrective, for they rediscover or replace demoted meaning to the religious terms. Among them, without explanation of imagination, there is the residual contact between life and the imagination which is essential to freedom." He says the residual contact between life and the imagination is essential to freedom, to the kind of freedom that stokes our hearts because we are the ones arriving at meaning before anyone showed us how to get there. I know how absurd it would be to try and translate what I'm saying right now into German. Every time I might try to distinguish the difference between heaven and sky, two English words, in German I will always only be left with one, with no distinction between them, no difference, and any meaning other than my own uncertainty and confusion would be lost. German, as I know it, is a language that has always brought about longer, more specific, more precise, and more complexly constructed texts. In fact, any typographer tasked with laying out a book that contains an English-German translation will tell you that the German text is always at least 20% longer. It occupies that much more space. It is just more. In German, words can be infinitely created by an elegant grammatical process that refines meaning through compiled details, building gloriously long, intricate words that don't exist in other languages. That can't. But the language is not performing in this way, in this precise, specific way right now, not with this word. In my Western English understanding of the word heaven, I see it as a location, a place somewhere beyond the sky. Heaven is an intangible spiritual oasis above the weather, above matter, above migration, air traffic, and drones. Heaven does not mingle in earthly things. While the sky is something else entirely, it is vulnerable but factual, shifting and moving, chaotic and expansive, but also, in some way, I consider the sky to be tactile. It is real. It is in a way of this earth, even though it finds itself above it. When I ask Merle if German people feel the religious implication in the word Himmel, if they hear God's address every time they talk about the sky, she says no. She says that it's all in my head, which is true, because that is where words live. But she also suggests that the implication might also work the other way around. That heaven, as a word, might not be as distinct as I see it, and that by separating heaven from sky, I might be taking something precious, large, vague, and all-encompassing, and reducing it to something banal. That by using one word in German, you could maintain a sort of openness, an ambiguity, while my reading forces it in this other direction. She also wonders if her inability to see the word being bound to faith might stem from her lifelong use of the word, just like mine does. To her, the translation feels right, but her answer does not unmake my problem, because I'm reluctant to use one word when I feel there ought to be two. Sometimes I want language to be neater than it is. But the sky doesn't just change in German and English. It changes every time you move it. In Thailand, the translation for the word sky, fa, is also just one word. But then the word goes and does all these other things that it can't do in English. In Thai, if you give the word fa a certain preposition, si fa, then it changes its abilities. The sky becomes everything on earth that is blue. Translated back, some amazing things happen. Your jeans are sky. Your eyes are sky. The car over there, just down the street, next to the deli, is sky. You spill sky paint on the floor, tear a sky dress. The ocean is sky. The sky with this preposition falls from its heights and mingles with other objects. It falls down to become part of other things. This is language changing the way we remember to recognize certain qualities in things. This is one way we mark them. This is language changing the nature of how we see. Merle assures me that we can call sky heaven, and it won't seem strange. I have to take her word for it. I don't really have a choice. Heaven feels like a conclusion, a destination, a spatial end. I'd like to reserve the meaning of the sky in its simplest form as an expanse above us, empty of its connotations, but full of possibilities. It is an expanse that reflects light, that suggests direction, that indicates a space of constant, overwhelming change.
Four Mondays ist eine Produktion der Kunsthalle Münster. Verantwortlich für das Konzept Merle Radke. Redaktion und Koordination Artefaktkulturkonzepte Jana Bernhardt und Merle Radke. Produktion Bela Brandes. Intro Arne Lenk. Grafikdesign JMMP Julian Mader und Max Prediger. Ein besonderer Dank geht dem gesamten Team der Kunsthalle Münster sowie allen Gästen unseres Podcasts.